Things off today at Connect 2018. I want to encourage you to tweet throughout my session using the hashtag CanConnectEd. I want to start by telling you a quick story. I was asked to speak at an event a few years ago, and an organizer that booked me didn't know me, and he'd never heard me speak before. And I remember he introduced me, and I watched him take his seat, and he leaned over to his buddy, and he says, "I hope she doesn't suck." So I just want to promise you today that I'm not going to suck. I'm going to set the bar really high for myself this morning. It has been a very action-packed few days here in Niagara, and this image about sums things up for me, and I think I had this exact same conversation with my friend Brock yesterday. So I believe we're all here because we are committed to answering this question, and we often start here with the what, when instead we need to start with the why, because when you know yourself and you know your why, your what becomes more clear and impactful.
So you're a musical director?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying?
All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now, right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
Okay. Here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
So as I'm speaking today, I want you to think about your why. Meet my why. This is my daughter Hallie and my son Ty. And the decisions I make for my students are the same decisions I would make for my own children. And it's absolute that those decisions ignite a passion in children, an excitement, a new discovery, and such a deep love of the experience that they will remember who they were with and how they felt. Imagine how powerful learning could be if it was approached with the same anticipation as Christmas morning. And what role has technology played in building that anticipation, excitement, and new discovery, with engaging students and impacting what is best for kids in education? Edison believed the evolution of technology would revolutionize the education system, specifically the motion picture, by replacing textbooks in classrooms. Sorry, Edison, you didn't get that one right. But what about now? Would Edison have made a similar claim that YouTube would replace the use of the motion picture and revolutionize education? But after the motion picture came the radio broadcast, taking classrooms by wave. Revolutionary? The students pictured here are following a radio broadcast and instructions for making paper animals. Today, the radio broadcast has evolved yet again into the video conference, connecting students with anyone, anywhere, anytime around the world. And in this clip here, my students were inquiring about Lunar New Year, and we connected with the Old Jail Art Center for an art history lesson and activity. It was Year of the Sheep.
With our texture, let's start with the soft wool. Now, students, we are not going to glue our cotton down in little balls like this. Sheep don't have perfect little balls on their
Then came the computer. This was going to be the technology destined to revolutionize education. Look, if we teach kids how to program a computer, they can make a stick hit a ball. And now, here we are today, teaching kids as young as 4 and 5 computational thinking skills through coding. I think you get the idea. But what about technology in the future? Will new technology be revolutionary? Technology in education is not to spark a revolution, but to provide a reconceptualization of teaching and learning, while also serving as a catalyst for transformation and innovative change. And that reconceptualization of teaching and learning year after year moves us closer and closer to better understanding how learning happens, which isn't just a consideration for the early years, as the big ideas transcend any grade or age of learner. So how does learning happen? Well, that's easy. It begins with you. Because pedagogy is our understanding of how learning happens. So let's start with a solid non-example.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? A tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which anyone raised or lowered, raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
When we depersonalize the learning experience, there is no experience of learning. And if we continue to be the sole providers of content, only teaching students what we know, then our students will only be capable of our best. And I see this as one of our greatest challenges. Instead, we need to teach our students to become knowledge builders by finding creative ways to introduce them to the ideas and people that are of interest to them, experiences that offer inquiry potential, that will motivate them to engage in sustained inquiry on their own. This is how we inspire in students a love of learning. I want you to meet Josh. His love of learning happened when our grade 2 class traveled the world. I remember the day I met Josh. One of the first things he said to me was, "Mrs. Cassell, I'm a talker, not a writer." And he wasn't kidding, like seriously. But September passed and Josh hadn't written a single word. That was until the students started building their own blogs to share their learning and connect with a real, authentic audience. Now I had Josh's attention, but he was still feeling uninspired. Then we had our first video conference with the class in Columbia. And Josh had the opportunity to meet kids that he'd never met before. And he was so excited. His fire had been ignited. And after that video conference, Josh said to me, "I want to write a book about Columbia." Teaching and learning is about our ability to build relationships. As James Comer once said, no significant learning can happen without a significant relationship. And as George Washington Carver believed, all learning is understanding relationships. And Sugata Mitra proved that in the absence of supervision or formal teaching, children can teach each other if they are motivated by curiosity, peer interest, and relationships. And here's Rita Pearson's take on how relationships impact learning.
A colleague said to me one time, "They don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed." Well, I said to her, "You know, kids don't learn from people they don't like."
So Josh's educational experience was not transformed because a teacher handed him a pencil or put an iPad in his hands. His experience was transformed because the work we do in education matters. The relationships we have with our students matter. And the time we spend building relationships with our students and teaching them how to build relationships with others matters. And it's these relationships that are transforming the educational experience for students.
Well, I knew him as Mr. Carbonaro. Patricia Lovelace.
Was my 9th and 10th grade English teacher.
Was our history and science teacher.
She was typically the teacher that you got if you weren't doing too well in school.
Yeah, I was kind of lost without her.
I just remember wanting to walk into the classroom.
There's sometimes like just in high school because it's so hard, everyone's just...
Middle school is kind of the time that I started getting bullied.
She was just so good at what she did and instilled that confidence in me.
It's about 4 years after graduation, my life got interrupted. And it wasn't until the end of the 80s when I started going back to school again.
Encouraged me to be myself. Sounds cheesy, but...
She just simply said, she was like, well, prove them wrong.
What would you want to tell him if you saw him today?
Thank you. And one day I plan to try to repay him.
I don't know if he knows the full, just like how big it was for me personally.
I miss you and I appreciate you so much. And thank you for teaching me. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God!
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. What are you doing here? Hello, hello.
Hi!
How are you? I'm great.
Sometimes you just don't feel like you're making an impact, and to be told that you have something that I needed to hear.
I was going to say thank you.
Your students are out there, or will be out there in the future, sharing stories about their relationship with you, their favorite teacher, and how you inspired in them to find their passion and be their best. So how do we measure the experience had by students in our classroom? Well, one of the questions we can ask ourselves is, would you want to be a student in your own classroom? And recognizing that the relationships we build with students impact their ability to learn, let's revisit the student-teacher relationship in the context of how we teach literacy. Here's a simple yet problematic definition of what it means to be literate, defined by Merriam-Webster and dictionary.com. Read, write, repeat. But reading and writing, or communicating, is a social process. And reading for what purpose and with what level of understanding, with or without support, in what context, and how is the learning being communicated with others? And as writers, what is our purpose and context for writing? And who is our audience? And if we think back to Josh's story, simply asking students to imagine a purpose and an audience as they read or write for us brings us back to that problematic definition of literacy: read, write, repeat. So what kinds of experiences are we co-creating with students to engage them in reading and writing, or communicating as a social process? And what role does technology play in developing students as social learners? Our potential as literate individuals is dependent upon our integrated experiences with technology in a variety of social settings, both offline and online. And it's through those integrated experiences, and I should add immersive experiences, that our learners will develop their full potential as readers and writers. I want to tell you now about Brian. And I want to tell you about how his use of technology offline, so paper and pencil, and online, with an iPad and his blog, helped him become a better writer, a social learner, an effective communicator, and also taught me how to be a better teacher. As my grade 1-2 students work towards building their first-term digital portfolios, I asked my kids to select a piece of writing from the beginning of the year, and a current piece of writing, and then reflect on their strengths and next steps as readers, writers, and communicators. You see here in September, Brian was only writing a few letters to represent words in his sentence, but by February, his writing had improved significantly. What I want to point out is the text that you see here, typed using the iPad, was written the day after the text he printed there above. And the reason I want to point that out is because if I was assessing Brian's skill as a writer, and I was only looking at the text that was typed or the text that was written, I would have two very different assessments of Brian's skill level and ability. However, together, Both pieces of writing tell a more complete story. What Brian taught me was how he was using technology, his pencil and his iPad, to help him improve as a writer. He also showed me that he has the ability to solve problems and think critically. So in September, I could only write 4 words, but now I can write about 4 sentences. In September, I forgot the uppercase, but now I can write with uppercase. In September, I always forgot my spaces, but in February, I always use spaces. And the learning for me came here in the last sentence. I'm now going back on my iPad to listen to my sentence and fix my words. When I read his reflection, all I could think about was how many times I'd sent him and countless others back to their desks to fix their sentences. Those of you who teach primary feel, I'm sure, like a broken record. I don't see any capitals. Where are your periods? How about leaving some spaces between your words? And I started thinking about that conversation from my students' perspective. If I was Brian, or countless other kids in my class, I might have been thinking, if I knew someone was actually going to read my writing other than you, I might care enough to do that. Or, if I knew how to do it right the first time, I would have done it right the first time. Simply handing Brian an iPad is not what helped him improve as a writer or a learner. My relationship with Brian as a partner in learning, paired with the experience of using digital technologies for writing, and the opportunity to connect with an authentic audience, is what motivated him to be his best. As technology continues to explode the way kids interact with the world around them, it will continue to change how they want to learn in the classroom. They don't want to be our sidekicks anymore. They want to be their own heroes. So how do we create that experience of learning for students? I'd like to suggest that we start by reading the curriculum with a lens to the future. And we design new literacy experiences and invite students to be co-creators of those experiences, both offline and online. And we start by understanding and expanding our understanding of text here and here. This is a snapshot of the internet in 60 seconds in 2017. And each of these platforms or software applications is also a text form. But one of the things that differentiates these text forms from traditional forms of print text is that these text forms are in a constant state of iteration. And these text forms also double as learning environments, communities, and networks. And if we consider for a moment how these text forms and environments require new pedagogies and, more importantly, a growth mindset, we start to think differently about what literacy looks like in our classrooms. Because we are in a technology tsunami, and whether you love it or hate it, ultimately we have to figure out how to survive it and make it work for us. Because when we speak of new literacies, we mean that literacy is not just new today. It becomes new every day of our lives. And in order to teach students the skills and competencies they need, not just to survive the tsunami, but to ride the wave, then we need to move learning into these social, literacy-rich, networked learning environments. Let's now take a closer look at how we might read the curriculum with a lens to the future. So if we start by looking at what we do traditionally, we would use a narrative text. We would teach inferential reasoning about setting, events, problems, solutions. And typical discussion questions might include, what do you think is going to happen next? What evidence in the text suggests this? But if we read the curriculum with a lens to the future, those same expectations imply that we could use informational text such as search engine results, that we would teach students how to infer information from those search engine results. And typical discussion questions might include, which of these sites is a commercial site? Where was the site produced? And what evidence in the text suggests this? So if we read the curriculum with a lens to the future, keeping in mind that no significant learning happens without a significant relationship, how are we leveraging digital technologies to help our students develop as literate social learners? We're going to now take a look at a series of mom texts and tweets. You guys ready? Okay. What are the skills we need to learn in order to communicate by text? And let's start with this example. I received 12 consecutive empty bubbles, text bubbles from my mom the other day. Apparently she was trying to unlock her phone. Well, once we figure out how to turn our devices on, then we have a lot of learning to do, like understanding where to find things and what gestures to use to make the necessary features work and to communicate our ideas clearly. Finally, you've entered a digital age and got a smartphone. How is it, Mom? Hello, why aren't you answering? How do you do a space? Let's take a look at another example. My mom couldn't figure out punctuation, so she would type it out, "How are you?" ? And as we navigate a new platform, it's important we understand the purpose for being there. Andy, who's reading this? I am. Oh, this isn't Twitter? Why we choose this platform over others and who our intended or unintended audience might be. We also have to tackle new learning associated with using different devices to access a chosen platform, which often presents a new series of challenges. Hey, it's a beautiful day. Wish you were here. Just look at the view. Mom, your finger's covering the lens. Oops, what about now? You can't just send the same picture, Mom. You need to take another one. Okay, how about now? Yeah, looks great, Mom. As we develop device fluency and learn to better define our purpose and intended audience, as readers of text, we're always combining all kinds of information to infer meaning based on the content and the context. On Valentine's Day last year, my mom texted me, "Enjoy your VD." And here's another one, love this one. "I got an A in Chem. WTF, well done." "Mom, do you know what WTF means?" "Yeah, well, that's fantastic." And this brings me to my next point. Social media is changing language. Every platform we use has its own vocabulary and set of rules. And in order to learn how to communicate in these environments, you need to immerse yourself in them and take risks if you want to become fluent or literate. And in order to decode and comprehend text that we read online, we need to understand how the language is used. Take, for an example, the extensive use of acronyms in text messages and tweets. "Dad just told me you bought a car. Can you afford that?" YOLO. Do you even know what that means? No, but did I use it correctly? Sadly, yes. Or combine characters to create symbols to communicate meaning. I texted her, "Have a great day, love you." She texted back, "Thanks, I will, but what does less than 3 mean?" And of course, the hashtag. "I'm learning how to hashtag." "That's great, Mom." Hashtag conversation with son. And when the language of a given platform is used incorrectly, it creates confusion and oftentimes hysterical laughter, but the intended meaning is lost. So engaging with text online means we need to learn the vocabulary of tweeting, texting, etc. And when we start to feel comfortable using the language, then we gain the confidence to take new risks and add our own new vocabulary to the language. When I send my mom anything remotely funny, she replies, "Claw, cackle like a hen." "Hey, I made up this new typey face thing." "Oh, an emoticon, sure, let's see it." Nope, no more. Please don't make me tell you what that is. Okay, and if you don't know, you can ask some people in the front row there. So what does reading with a lens to the future actually look like in the classroom? What about a Twitter chat to engage students in reading and writing? A year ago this summer, a passionate group of teachers and students came together to create OnEd Student Chat. OnEd Student Chat is a student-led Twitter chat connecting K-12 students across Ontario to discuss topics related to character education, social justice, and citizenship. OnEd Student Chat creates opportunities for students to network with others, gain perspective, build relationships with new learning partners in a literacy-rich learning environment, experience social media as a powerful platform for learning, and establish a positive digital footprint.
Welcome to your Ontario Education Student Chat, where we are connecting and empowering K-12 students across Ontario to lead, learn, share, and act together to create a positive change.
Our focus is always on student voice. We pick the topics, we pick the questions, and we lead the chats.
Welcome everyone to our first ever YouTube Live event and Tweet and Talk for OnEd Student Chat.
We're just going to go over a few of the things that we expect, we want to see here in this chat in order to make things go smoothly, positively, productively. So Nigel's going to start us off.
All right, so the first norm that we have is that the chat is open to grades K-12. So please keep that in mind, use language that everyone can understand and build on, and use age-appropriate language as well.
Another one is that we would like and encourage active participation. So don't be afraid to tweet out or share on YouTube Live and any ideas you may have or what you're thinking.
Our first question is, what makes you unique?
One of the things that makes me unique is I go around and do presentations at various conferences about how to use coding in teachings, and I think it's really important that we keep up with that as we have new technologies evolve.
So leadership to me means listening to other people's ideas, like the quiet people, and then trying to bring it to the bigger group.
We have, this sense that leadership is, the big roles that we play, like such as here. But in reality, you can be a leader in your everyday life, and you might not, no one's gonna know. It's the things that you do while no one's watching that really shows your leadership.
What do you think basic human rights are?
Like freedom, so like being able to be like any religion they want in any country.
I guess being an immigrant myself, as I said, I moved to Canada not so long ago, just 3 years. So I think for me, having my own culture and being able to speak my own language and embrace it here in Canada is a big part of it. And I'm very happy this human right of mine was respected and is continuing to being respected. So, alors, parce que je suis un immigrant aussi, je veux dire que c'est très important pour moi de percevoir ma culture et ma langue materne ici au Canada.
So my mom works with a lot of Aboriginal people, and one thing that they talk about is how we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. It's so that we listen, we're supposed to listen and respect others more than we talk.
I just noticed something from Twitter. 7% of words are actually spoken, 38% is in how words are spoken, like in the tone of voice, and 55% is in one's facial expressions and body language.
And those connections help build relationships,
Yeah.
right? And when we start to care about others, that's when we build and develop that empathy. And that empathy in many ways drives us to want to affect that positive change that you are speaking so passionately about. To wrap things up, you can find us on Twitter at OnEdStudentChat, or you can find us online at our website, onedstudentchat.com. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye. And here are some of the ways that Twitter addresses the Ontario Language Arts curriculum in reading, writing, and media literacy, and provides opportunities for students to develop learning skills, global competencies, and digital citizenship. So let's continue now and look at the writing curriculum with a lens to the future. So traditionally, we write for one of the 4 purposes, right? Inform or explain, entertain, describe, and persuade. We would teach traditional forms of writing like the haiku poem, a set of directions, a timeline, or a narrative. And a typical audience might include the teachers and students in the class, and students tend to write independently and have peers edit their work. But if we look at the curriculum with a lens to the future, we can read that same expectation. And what you'll notice is that the purposes of writing haven't changed. We are still teaching students to either inform or explain, entertain, describe, or persuade. However, the forms of text have changed. So now we want to integrate forms of text like text messages, emails, search engine results, blog posts. And our audience extends beyond the walls of our classrooms to include global learning partners. And students are now writing collaboratively in real time with others using digital tools and resources. Writing is not about imagining an audience. This is a perfect haiku written by a grade 7 student. 5 syllables here, 7 more syllables there. Are you happy now? And I think that tells the story. Writing is about an authentic audience, right? We want to write for real people. We want an audience that will engage with us, give us feedback, share ideas, reflect, comment, celebrate, and reciprocate. And what better way to engage an audience than with memes? I don't think that means what you think it means. And a meme is an idea, behavior, or use of something like an image that is shared from one person to another within a culture. And I'm sure you've all seen Success Kid, AKA, his name is actually Sammy Griner. Did you know that this image has also been remixed and shared hundreds of thousands of times? Doug Belshaw's concept of remixing is an idea that we can create new digital literacies by remixing other people's work. So here's another example. Teacher catches reading meme on school computer, laughs, and tells you to scroll down. And here he is again, and again, and again, and again. But did you know that Sammy Griner's father, Justin, was diagnosed with kidney disease when this image was first shared online? And 3 years later, during a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for his dad's kidney transplant, some internet users recognized Sammy as Success Kid. The campaign went viral, and the Griners raised more than $100,000 in just a few days to pay for his dad's surgery. What I want you to remember today is that behind every image is a person with a story. So what do memes look like in the classroom? How about a meme challenge between classes? I'd like you to meet Hunter and his best friend, Leah. I'm sure some of you have felt like that recently. And Dave, tune in tomorrow as we see Yoga in the Wild. And this is one of my favorites. Nicole, the beach, you say, I'll pack my suit. And we also had kids who created lolcats for the meme challenge. And if this is a new concept with you, which would surprise me, lolcat is a compound word of the acronymic abbreviation, and I know it sounds like I made that up, but LOL for laugh out loud and cat. Lolcats even have their own language called lolspeak. Fun fact, this was the first lolcat ever created in 1905. And the caption at the bottom of the picture reads, which I always feel needs to be read in an English accent, so no judgment. What's delaying my dinner? Doesn't that fit? It does fit, right? I think so. But behind every image is a cat, and behind every cat is a person with a story. But what I want to know is who exactly are these people, and what are their stories? I don't know what possible stories could include cats with lightsabers, although I'm drawn to that, and I don't know why. In 2017, there were over 16 million lolcat images shared online. Today, 1 year later, 27 million. I know, right? So what do lolcats look like in the classroom? Well, meet Jamal. He likes cats too. And we can transfer our meme-making skills and ideas into new contexts for new purposes, and we can remix content in different ways using the same technology, right? This translates into the application of those new literacy skills in fun and engaging ways for kids. But when we copy digital images from the internet, we make copies that are identical to the originals, copies that can be easily shared at no cost, which means that anyone could potentially have access. So it's imperative that we know and understand our responsibilities when remixing digital content, and that we are teaching our kids to be responsible. Reading Copyright Matters is a great place to start. And it's equally important that we teach our students these skills in context, online. Being literate also includes understanding how to use digital tools and resources ethically and responsibly when remixing digital content. This also includes how to properly attribute the work of others. But we want students and teachers to create their own unique content too. And blogging is an engaging way, an authentic way to tell our stories, to document and share the process and products of our learning, develop new literacy skills and global competencies, leverage digital to extend learning beyond the walls of our classrooms, and build relationships with others. We need to remind ourselves that students must own their own learning if we want them to develop a positive relationship with the experience of learning. So what do blogs look like in the classroom? Blogging is about purposeful and authentic writing in digital spaces with a global audience. Whoops. Oh, I got click happy there. Let's try that again. Hoping that's going to go. by collaborating and problem solving with a global audience, thinking critically about our thinking and documenting our learning journey. It's about reciprocating with an emphasis on quality, providing teachers, students with the authentic experiences to read, write, comment, reflect, and connect in digital spaces, while observing digital citizenship responsibilities and rights. It's about making our learning and thinking visible, searchable, and available to others. And kids love it. And if we dig deeper into blogging as a form of writing, then there are opportunities for us bloggers to learn a new language or two. Take, for example, the markup language of HTML. If we want to continue to move along the literacy spectrum, we can learn other programming languages as well, like PHP, JavaScript, and so on. As I see it, being code literate is a requirement for participation today in our digital world. And I really like the analogy made by Douglas Rushkoff in his article posted on Edutopia. When we acquired language, we didn't just learn how to listen, but how to speak. When we acquired text, we didn't just learn how to read, but also how to write. And now that we have computers, we're learning how to use them, but not how to program them. And if we are not code literate, we are bound by the limitations defined by the creators of that content. And this puts us and our kids at a huge disadvantage. We are all spending increasing amounts of time in these digital environments. And when the rules have been written by others, just being familiar with how code works would help us navigate this terrain and understand its limitations and determine whether those limits are there because the technology demands it or because someone wants it that way. Code-literate kids stop accepting the applications and websites they use at face value, and they begin engaging critically and purposely with them instead. So what might coding look like in the classroom? Well, as students explore coding as literacy, why not have them code the literacy curriculum? And it's through these integrated experiences coding that we create opportunities for students to develop computational thinking skills. And to help support the work you're doing in your classroom, integrating computational thinking through coding, not only can you reach out to brilliant educators like Brian Aspinall and Lisa Ann Floyd, but last year our team created a computational thinking and computer science, or coding scope and sequence resource and companion document, which you can access on my blog. And in this resource, you'll find information and ideas about integrating global competencies, computer science programming knowledge and skills, languages and platforms that you can use at any grade level, and learning skills, and how you can integrate all of these pieces through coding into any classroom program in any subject area. So as we reflect on what it means to be literate today and consider the value and complexity of learning in digital spaces, how are we transforming literacy, but really all instruction, to meet the needs of today's learner? Because the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write. It will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So what if we use technology to develop the skills and competencies then required for learning? Teachers and students would need to learn how to be more effective communicators, collaborators, critical thinkers, and creators. Teachers and students would need to engage in learning partnerships and inquiries that develop citizenship and character. And together, we need to create educational spaces and design deep learning tasks that support the development of skills like analytical thinking, creative problem solving, motivation, drive, adaptability, decision-making, risk-taking, strategic thinking, leadership, a global mindset, entrepreneurship. But we don't do this alone. Teaching and learning, especially with digital technology, should be done in collaboration or partnership with others. It's through relationships that we find direction and the confidence to explore a new course, or the courage to seek guidance when the road forks or becomes crooked and narrow. And going down a chosen path involves learning to allow for an open-mindedness, a growth mindset. And in the words of the Spanish poet Antonio Machado, travelers, there is no path. Paths are made by walking. So as we walk our different paths, in order to stay the course, it's important that we focus on seeing the forest and not the trees. Because the forest helps us focus on what's most important: building relationships, developing global competencies, and learning how to learn. And because what is new today will be new again tomorrow. Change is happening all around us, and it's our ability to learn and adapt to that change that will ensure our success today and in the future. So what if we connected with others then for a greater purpose? I want to begin by exploring this question here in my school board. And as you can see, I work in a very rural area in southwestern Ontario. And after a number of years, I started to notice a real inequity in the kinds of educational experiences students were receiving in a rural setting compared to the experiences students would receive in an urban city. This is also known as the urban and rural gap in education. So I started using technology to connect my kids with people and places around the world. One of the most memorable connections we made was with class in Laka, Sierra Leone, Africa. We began by exchanging letters back and forth on our class blog. The first letter we received from Alazine Kamara's students described their village, where they went to school, and to our surprise that they had to walk 2 hours one way to an internet cafe to read our blog. We exchanged letters for months, sharing stories of the land, people, traditions, and celebrations. We ended the year with a video conference. Our friends in Sierra Leone sang and danced for us every time it was their turn to share. It was such a powerful experience. My students and the kids in Sierra Leone had become friends. The following year, I reached out to Alazine, eager to rekindle our learning partnership. However, to my surprise, I did not receive a reply. A month passed, and I decided to follow up again. But that long-awaited email I received from Alazine was not what I was expecting. Alazine wrote to me about how his village had been devastated by the Ebola virus. School had been canceled, businesses were closed, families quarantined, and his people were dying.
Sierra Leone is presently facing the most difficult situation in its medical history, in the form of a deadly outbreak known as Ebola. This virus has affected us greatly and has been ongoing since early this year. We start with people living behind the red line and quarantine zone at Water Street, Congo Town. We look at the concerns raised by the people and how the outbreak has affected their daily lives.
And if we do nothing, we all sit down because of this Ebola. Business only one, like the best business now, it's not each business. What in the town say Ebola is.
This virus is affecting 99% of the citizenry of Sierra Leone, either directly or indirectly.
This Ebola will come, it don't disturb family then.
What I read next was his heartfelt description, how most of the men, women, and children in his village had died or were dying from the virus. It was no longer a story that I was reading about in the news. These experiences were now a part of my reality because of my relationship with Alazine and his students. After reading his letter, I thought long and hard about whether or not I was going to tell my students. I went with my gut. I decided I needed to tell them. So the next day over lunch, we got together and I explained to them what had happened to our friends in Sierra Leone. And as we cried and hugged each other, I will never forget the first words spoken by a little girl in my class. She said, "What are we going to do to help?" And in that moment, it was like a switch was flipped. The kids moved into action. They were on a mission to figure out how they were going to make a difference in this community. I stood back and watched as they talked about what they had learned about life in Laka. No running water, no flush toilets, animals living in the village. And then I watched them apply what they had learned to the current situation. They came to a consensus that in this community, germs must spread quickly. So they decided they would create posters for the community about washing your hands and sneezing into your arm to help stop spread the virus. After a few weeks, my whole school got involved, creating posters, drawing pictures, bringing in school supplies. I don't remember how many packages I mailed off to Sierra Leone, but I do remember the letter I received from Alazine when the packages arrived. Dear Miss Leigh in grade 2 at Stevens Central, your kindness, thoughtfulness, and generosity has given hope to the people in my village. You have given me hope to know that children as young as you have so much love in your hearts and that you are willing to help my people who live so far away is an act of compassion, kindness, and love we will never forget. This experience forever changed me as an educator, When we get to know the people behind the stories become real. And the stories become real because we are emotionally connected to the people behind the stories. And when we are emotionally connected to someone, we have the greatest potential to learn. What I discovered about teaching and learning is that we are here to leave the world a better place. And as a result of these kinds of experiences and so many others, I created the Digital Human Library. Today, DHL is a not-for-profit organization advancing education as Canada's premier digital experiential learning library. Through Canada's largest network of Canadian teachers, industry leaders, experts, and collaborative community partnerships, DHL creates opportunities for teachers and students to engage in connections-based learning, choosing from 3 types of virtual learning catalogs. Video conferencing with hundreds of experts in all curriculum subject areas, live-streamed educational content with over 500 programs offered across the country over the course of the year, and the largest collection of educational multimedia virtual tours and VR on the web. Oh, and did I mention these catalogs are all free? And now we're going to connect with one of those experts. I'd like to introduce you to Dave Ruck. Dave is a talented musician and performer from Buffalo, New York, who has been extensively involved in the arts and education field, using music to teach core curriculum and inspire children around the world. Please join me in welcoming Dave.
Hi.
All right, hold on, Dave. I got to get you up here.
All right.
Okay. Max, don't make it easy, right? All right, you're all set, Dave.
Oh, good.
The
How's
stage is
everybody?
yours.
Great to be with you all. I'm really just across the border and across the Niagara River from you in Buffalo. And you all look wonderful. I can't see you or hear you. But I'm sure, how many of you were out late last night? Anybody? All right, I assume that there's a few hands up. Well, I'm in the same boat as you. But it's wonderful to be with you guys today. I've had some amazing experiences over the years connecting with classrooms around the world in this kind of format, live streaming and video conferencing, and even have been working hard over the last 4 or 5 years to develop ways to make this really accessible for classrooms even to use on their own schedule. So Leigh asked me to just do a quick song with you guys, which I'm happy to do. And I figured since you've been watching the Niagara River flow make its way towards Lake Ontario, that it would be apropos to explore the story of the mermaid from Lake Ontario. I'm sure you all are quite familiar with this, but a wonderful tale, and I always wanted to write a song about it, but I could never think of any words that rhymed with Ontario, so I didn't get very far. Well, leave it to Shel Silverstein. You probably know some of his books, children's classics like Where the Sidewalk Ends and The Giving Tree and Runny Babbitt. We'll leave it to him. He came up with the ultimate song about the mermaid from Lake Ontario, and he was able to come up with at least 15 rhymes for the word Ontario. So we'll see how many of the rhymes you guys can get. Here's the true story of the mermaid from Lake Ontario. Oh, the mermaid of Ontario had long, green, stringy hair-o, and a seaweed gown to wear-o, but she had no one to marry-o. That mermaid of Ontario loved a big mouth bass named
Lario,
who lived beneath Lake St. Bonus points. Clario, good. Nobody in the States ever gets that. Underneath the St. Clair Ferry-o. So that mermaid of
Ontario.
Just checking. She sent a seagull emissario to ask that big bass Lario if he'd agree to get married-o. Wow, guess what Larry said? No, 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 said Larry-o, my life I will not
Jerry-o.
I'd rather play
solitaire-o. Come on, I'm singing alone here.
Underwear-o. He said you're so ordinary-o, and I'm extraordinary-o. I dress so And I possess such a fine
vocabulary.
Because I memorized the fish dictionary. Before I marry you, I'd marry, a Guernsey cow from the... I'd eat a poison. Wind up in the fish sem. Well, that poor mermaid of Ontario, it was more than she could.
There you go. Now you're getting into it.
She cried for a day, then she ran away with a yuppie little guppy named
Nice.
Yeah. And now they're a happy
Perio.
'Cause Gary, he's a Perio. On his yacht in Lake St. Clario, they cuddle in a cozy
stereo.
And they listen to his underwater
stereo.
Very good. You guys are awake. And that big mouth bass named Larry-o, he married that cow from the
stereo.
Ate that poison.
Stereo.
Wound up with fish dissing.
Stereo.
And that's the whole
scenario.
Del Silverstein, thank you so much. Thanks to Leigh for inviting me to come do this.
Thanks.
I think you're hitting on a really important nerve as far as, innovating and keeping in touch with our creativity as educators, which all becomes really complicated and hard. It shouldn't be, but it is. I know here in the States, and maybe things are more similar there than different, teachers really feel like their hands are tied right now. Just with everything else that's heaped on their plate, a lot of the reasons that we all got into teaching, a lot of the things we were hoping to accomplish, they become much more difficult because of all this other crap that we're tasked with, right? And so kudos to Leigh, and that's what this type of learning is all about, and hope everybody's enjoying the conference, and great to spend a little time with you guys.
Thanks so much, Dave.
All
right, we'll chat soon. Take care. So what makes connecting with others such a powerful experience is that everyone you will ever meet knows something you don't. Like how to rhyme with Ontario. How many words can rhyme with Ontario? And with this in mind, my challenge to you is to find a mentor and to be a mentor. And I want to introduce you to one of my mentors, Kathy Beach. I introduced myself to Kathy on Twitter almost 2 years ago after a conversation with Rolla Tibshirani. Rolla had me at a Kids Guide to Canada. And Kathy and I worked together on a Kids Guide using video conferencing in G Suite for over a year before we actually met in person. And we've been working together ever since with an incredible team of educators from across the country. And the best part is, aside from connecting students across the country, of course, is the friendship that has grown out of the love for doing what we believe is best for kids, connecting them with each other to learn. A Kids Guide to Canada is a national teacher-led initiative inviting every K-8 student in the country to help create Canada's first ever multilingual, multicultural, interactive guide to Canada made by kids and for kids. And in the process, help build a new era of understanding, empathy, and respect as called for by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
I see the streets where we all play, where we ride and run all day, and that patch of woods we like to roam. I see the city where my uncle lives, down along the water where Grandpa lives. I see the places we call home, and that's me on the map. There's my town, that's my street. Winding around, that's me on the map. Hey, hey, that's me on the map. Here I stand, that's my state, and this is my land. take our summer vacations. I see the trails around the lake. There's a river where we go fishing, and that's a mountain I am wishing I'll be climbing up someday. And that's me on the map. There's my town, that's my street, winding around. That's me on the map. Hey, hey. And that's me on the map. Here I stand, that's my state, and this is my land. That's me on the map. Hey, hey.
You can learn more about A Kid's Guide to Canada by visiting our website, akgcanada.com, and we hope to see your class on the map in 2018-2019. So I'm going to close today with a story titled The Spyglass by Richard Paul Evans. There once was a king who ruled over a darkened kingdom. Crops were planted and then failed, houses were built and then neglected, and people were impoverished and dispirited. One day, the king's castle received a surprise visit from an old traveler who asked for lodging. As the traveler approached the king, he said, "You do not look like a king." But the king replied, "I am the king of a poor kingdom. Our farms do not grow, our buildings are falling down, and my people are weary day and night, and they complain all the time. We were once a great kingdom, but all that has changed." The traveler asked astutely, "Why do you not change back?" The question surprised the king. It felt as if the traveler was placing the responsibility of the kingdom's persistent state of decay on the shoulders of him and his people. The king told the traveler that although they had tried to change, they had always failed due to circumstances seemingly beyond their control. "Well, we lack all knowledge of what once made this kingdom great," the king said. The traveler replied, "You lack but one thing," and kindly offered to show the king. The man pulled a spyglass from his pocket and invited the king to look through it. As the king looked through the spyglass, he saw great farms and gardens, magnificent castles and cathedrals, and fields of grain stretching as far as the eye could see. The traveler informed the king, "It is your own kingdom you see. Change requires work, but one must first see before doing. You have seen what might be. Now go and make it so." The king set out across his kingdom and began to share his newfound vision with his discouraged people. He invited his people to look at their surroundings through the magic lens of the mysterious spyglass. As the people looked through the spyglass, they saw their surroundings transformed in a remarkable way. A farmer saw fields of grain ready to be harvested. A friar saw his cathedral repaired and even more beautiful than it had been before. And each time his people had a vision, the king would say, "You have seen what might be. Now go and make it so." Over the next year, the kingdom was transformed. It became one of the richest, happiest kingdoms in the land. And the people of the land were all fed, homes and cathedrals were rebuilt, children played in the streets, and the village was alive with music. When the traveler returned the spyglass, the king asked if he could keep it. "But you no longer need the spyglass," the traveler said. "You can see without it. The spyglass only showed you what you could see if you believed, for it was only by faith that you and your people lacked. Faith is the beginning of all journeys. It is by faith that the seed is planted. It is by faith that the foundation is dug. It is by faith that each book is penned and each song written. And only by faith can we see that which is not, but can be." Faith is about living your why. And change requires taking a leap of faith. But remember, you don't make the jump alone. During your time here in Niagara, you have seen and will continue to see what might be. Now go and make it so. Thank you. I'm Leigh Cassell.